I was married to Emily, this gorgeous, charming woman I'd been with since college. She had this way of making me feel like I was the luckiest guy on earth. We had decent jobs, a small but cozy house, and a group of close-knit friends we saw almost every weekend. Among them was my best friend, Brian, the guy I'd trust with my life, at least back then. Now, looking back, I realize the first red flags were there long before I noticed them. Emily started coming home late from work without any real explanation. She'd claim she got stuck in meetings or that traffic was murder, except her office was barely 15 minutes away. She also started nitpicking every little thing I did, the way I dressed, the way I spoke, and even the way I laughed at jokes. At the time, I brushed it off as stress. I wasn't some big-shot executive, I was just a mid-level sales rep struggling to hit quotas, and Emily made it known that my ambition didn't exactly match hers. We'd still have sex, but even that became mechanical, like she was just going through the motions. Part of me thought it was the natural ebb and flow of marriage. I tried to be supportive, cooking dinner more often and planning date nights to rekindle that spark. But if I'm being honest, it felt like I was the only one putting in the effort. Something had changed in her, and I just couldn't put my finger on it. Eventually, I started hearing whispers, little things my friends would say, or they'd shoot me odd looks when Emily wasn't around. I chalked it up to them thinking we were having normal marital issues. Little did I know, the real storm was brewing right before my eyes. Like I said, things started going downhill without me fully realizing it. One night, I was hanging out at the bar with Brian, my best friend, and he kept checking his phone every couple of minutes. Normally, I'd tease him about being addicted to social media or text messages, but this time it felt different. He'd look at the screen, type something, and then he'd get this weird grin on his face. When I asked who he was texting, he just shrugged it off like it was some work thing. I thought nothing of it at the time. Brian never struck me as the sneaky type. But the real clue came a few days later. I was going through the monthly phone bill, trying to see where we could cut costs because, honestly, Emily made me feel like I wasn't pulling my financial weight. Anyway, I noticed there were dozens of late-night calls and texts to a number I didn't recognize. Even weirder. The calls and texts coincided with nights Emily said she was working late. Most of them were either right before or right after she got home. If that didn't scream red flag, I don't know what would. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe the number belonged to a coworker who was helping her on a big project. Or maybe I was being paranoid. I wanted to trust Emily, after all, we'd been together for years. But something in my gut told me something was off. Then came the tipping point. I found a receipt for a fancy hotel room in her car when I was looking for loose change. This wasn't a typical motel off the highway, it was one of those high-end places in the city where people go to impress their secret lovers or have romantic getaways. The date on the receipt matched one of those working late nights. My heart sunk. My stomach twisted. I knew I had to find out who she was with. Let's just say I was naive enough to hope it was a misunderstanding, but deep down, I knew our marriage had a big, ugly crack in its foundation. And boy, was that crack about to split wide open. By this point, I had hotel receipts and that suspicious phone bill as evidence something was going on. But I still didn't know who Emily was sneaking around with. I was desperate for answers, so one night when she was working late, I grabbed my car keys and decided to do the most cliché thing ever, follow her. I drove to that fancy hotel, the one on the receipt, and parked across the street. I felt ridiculous, like I was some low-budget detective in a spy movie. My heart pounded so loud I thought I'd pass out. I sat there for what felt like ages until, finally, I saw Emily step out of the hotel entrance. She looked all dressed up, her face glowing in the streetlight, definitely not the super stressed out, corporate drone she'd been portraying at home. And she wasn't alone. Right next to her was Brian, my supposed best friend. He had his arm wrapped around her like they were on some kind of honeymoon. I remember blinking a few times, hoping my eyes were playing tricks on me. But nope, there they were, laughing and flirting right there on the sidewalk as if it was the most natural thing in the world. My stomach dropped. I felt rage, betrayal, and this numb sense of disbelief all at once. Part of me wanted to charge across the street and beat the living daylights out of Brian. Another part of me just wanted to crawl into a hole. Instead, I stayed in my car, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I needed to calm down, to think. Confronting them in a blind fury wouldn't fix anything, and I sure as hell wasn't about to get arrested in front of my cheating wife and best friend. That night, I barely slept. A million questions spun in my head. How long had this been going on? Did all our friends know? And, worst of all, had my entire marriage been a sham? The next morning, I woke up feeling like I was in some parallel universe where everything I'd known was turned upside down. Emily came home a few hours later, claiming she had the longest night at the office and needed to crash. I swear, I almost laughed at how brazen she was. If there was any doubt in my mind before, it was gone now. She was a liar, a damn good one, at that. Still, part of me needed to hear her say it, to confirm I wasn't losing my mind. Because deep down, I knew my life was about to change forever. If you've been following along, you know I've just uncovered that my wife, Emily, has been cheating on me with none other than my best friend, Brian. Yeah, I know, double whammy of betrayal. So, naturally, I had to confront Emily. Let me walk you through that night because, man, it was a roller coaster. After seeing them together, my mind was a mess of anger, hurt, and confusion. I spent the rest of the evening pacing my small living room, replaying every moment with Emily, trying to understand how things had gone so terribly wrong. Finally, I decided I couldn't keep living a lie. It was time to face her. When Emily walked through the door that evening, she was dripping with a mix of exhaustion and false cheer. She tossed her keys on the table and flopped onto the couch, barely acknowledging my presence. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. Emily, I started, my voice trembling between rage and heartbreak. We need to talk. She shot me a look that was equal parts annoyance and dismissal. What is it now, Mark? I'm really tired. Can this wait until tomorrow? No, it can't, I replied, my frustration bubbling over. I saw you. With Brian. Together. How long has this been going on? Her eyes narrowed, and she scoffed. Are you serious? You're making this up, aren't you? I've been working late, dealing with client stuff. Maybe you're just paranoid. I held up the receipt I'd found and the phone bill. Don't lie to me, Emily. I have proof. Hotel receipts, late-night calls. Everything points to you too. Her facade started to crack. She stood up abruptly, her face flushing with a mix of anger and desperation. Fine, maybe I did spend some time with Brian, but it wasn't like that. It was just sex. It meant nothing. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. Nothing? You're having sex behind my back with my best friend, and you call that nothing? She rolled her eyes, clearly fed up with my accusations. Oh, come on, Mark. You're acting like I betrayed you for nothing. We were both unhappy, and it just happened. It's not like I planned it or anything. Unhappy? You're the one who made me feel like a loser, Emily. You never supported me, always tearing me down. Maybe that's why I wasn't good enough for you, I shot back, the words coming out harsher than I intended. She laughed bitterly. Good enough? You're pathetic, Mark. A mid-level sales rep struggling to make ends meet while I was climbing the corporate ladder. I needed someone who could keep up with me, not someone who was holding me back. Her words stung more than I expected. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the way she dismissed our entire relationship, painting me as the problem. So, what now? Are you just going to throw away everything we built because you couldn't handle a little success? Emily's expression hardened. Maybe it's better this way. I deserve someone who can actually give me what I want, not this loser who's always been in my shadow. With that, she turned and walked out of the room, leaving me standing there, shattered and furious. I slammed my fist against the wall, feeling the weight of her lies and the finality of our crumbling marriage. In that moment, I knew I had to rise above this betrayal, but I had no idea just how far I'd have to go to do it. After that explosive confrontation with Emily, I felt like my world had come crashing down. One minute I was married to this woman I thought I knew inside out, and the next, she was calling me a loser and leaving me for my best friend. It was a brutal wake-up call, but as painful as it was, it forced me to take a hard look at my life. The days that followed were a haze of anger, sadness, and a lot of soul-searching. I couldn't stand being around Emily anymore. Every little thing reminded me of her, her laughter, the way she looked at me, or rather, how she used to before everything went south, and especially Brian. The guy I'd trusted more than anyone had stabbed me in the back. It felt like the rug was pulled out from under me. I started isolating myself, shutting out friends and family because I didn't want to hear any pity or unsolicited advice. But deep down, I knew I couldn't stay stuck in this misery forever. I needed to find a way to move forward, to rebuild my life from the ground up. One evening, I decided to take a walk to clear my head. I wandered aimlessly through town, trying to make sense of everything. That's when I stumbled upon a local community center hosting a startup workshop. Curiosity got the better of me, and I signed up on a whim. Maybe, just maybe, this was the kick I needed to get out of my funk. The workshop was run by a guy named Jason, a charismatic entrepreneur who had turned a small tech idea into a thriving business. He spoke about resilience, innovation, and the importance of believing in yourself, even when everyone else doesn't. His words hit home. Here I was, feeling like a total failure, and Jason was talking about turning nothing into something incredible. Inspired by Jason's talk, I started brainstorming ideas. I had always been fascinated by technology and how it could solve everyday problems. After weeks of sleepless nights and countless cups of coffee, a concept began to take shape, an app that connected local businesses with freelancers for short-term projects. It was something I'd observed around town, small businesses struggling to find reliable help on short notice, and freelancers looking for consistent gigs. I knew nothing about app development, but determination was my new fuel. I reached out to Jason for guidance, and to my surprise, he agreed to mentor me. With his help, I began learning the basics of coding and business management. It wasn't easy, and there were plenty of moments when I wanted to give up, but the memory of Emily calling me a loser kept pushing me forward. Just as things were starting to gain momentum, life threw another curveball my way. Brian, my ex-best friend and the guy who broke my heart, approached me with a business proposition. He wanted to invest in my app, claiming he saw potential in the idea. My first instinct was to refuse, but a part of me wondered if this was some twisted way to stay connected or, worse, sabotage my efforts. I decided to trust my gut and declined his offer. Brian didn't take it well. He started spreading rumors that I was in over my head, that my app was doomed to fail, and insinuated that I wasn't cut out for entrepreneurship. It was blatant sabotage, and it stung. But instead of letting it break me, it fueled my determination even more. If Brian thought I was a loser, I was about to prove him spectacularly wrong. With Jason's mentorship and a small loan from a local investor who believed in my idea, I officially launched the app 6 months later. The initial response was slow, but word of mouth began to spread. Local businesses started seeing the value, and freelancers appreciated the streamlined process. It wasn't long before we hit a tipping point. More users meant more visibility, and soon, investors started knocking on my door. Looking back, it's crazy to think that all of this started from the depths of betrayal and heartbreak. Emily and Brian's actions pushed me to find a new path, one that I never would have discovered if I hadn't hit rock bottom. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of an unexpected journey that would lead me to heights I never imagined. If you've been following my journey, you know I've been climbing out of the wreckage that Emily and Brian left behind. My app, Quick Connect, was finally starting to take off, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of hope. But just when things seemed to be looking up, life decided to throw me another curveball. And trust me, this one was a doozy. So, Quick Connect was gaining traction faster than I'd anticipated. Users were flooding in, and local businesses were raving about how the app was revolutionizing their operations. I even landed a feature in a popular tech blog, which sent our downloads through the roof. It was all happening so quickly that I barely had time to process it. But amid the chaos, I received an unexpected message from none other than Sarah, Emily's coworker. Sarah and I had never been particularly close, but she'd always been one of the few people who seemed genuinely nice to me when I was going through rough patches with Emily. Her message was simple: she wanted to discuss a potential collaboration between Quick Connect and her company. I was hesitant at first, but something about her tone felt sincere. Maybe this was a chance to expand the app even further. After a few meetings and some late-night brainstorming sessions, Sarah proposed a partnership that sounded too good to be true. She wanted to integrate Quick Connect into her company's existing platform, promising massive exposure and investment in exchange for a significant equity stake. The offer was tempting. This could skyrocket Quick Connect to the next level. But something nagged at me. Sarah was too smooth, too eager. It felt off, but I was so blinded by my newfound success that I decided to take the plunge. We signed the agreement, and for the next few months, everything seemed perfect. The partnership brought in a flood of new users, and our revenue skyrocketed. I was on my way to becoming a real entrepreneur, no longer the guy Emily called a loser. But the higher I climbed, the more I realized that Sarah had her own agenda. She started pushing features that didn't align with Quick Connect's original mission and began making decisions without consulting me. It was like handing over the reins to someone who didn't share your vision. Amidst the corporate maneuvering, I couldn't shake the desire for revenge against Emily and Brian. Their betrayal had ignited a fire within me, and I was determined to prove them wrong in every possible way. I started attending high-profile networking events, making connections with influential investors, and even dabbling in some shady deals to get ahead. My relentless pursuit of success was consuming me, but I didn't care. This was my time to shine. One evening, at a lavish party thrown by a tech mogul I'd recently met, I overheard someone mentioning Emily and Brian. It turned out they were now part of a new startup that was gaining buzz in the industry. Seeing an opportunity, I decided to reach out. I arranged a meeting under the guise of potential collaboration, but my true intention was to undermine their efforts. Our meeting was tense. Emily looked stunning as always, but there was a hard edge to her demeanor. She introduced me to Brian, who greeted me with a forced smile. I played it cool, masking my anger and hurt. We discussed possible synergies between our companies, but I had other plans. I subtly fed them misinformation about Quick Connect's future developments, causing them to make strategic missteps that delayed their product launches. Back at Quick Connect, I noticed some irregularities, features disappearing, bugs appearing out of nowhere. It didn't take long to connect the dots. Sarah had been siphoning off resources to support my efforts against Emily and Brian. It was a risky move, but I couldn't let them overshadow my success. The lines between business and personal vendetta were blurring, and I was in too deep to back out. Just when things were spiraling, an unexpected event changed everything. Sarah was arrested for embezzlement and fraud, charges she had been hiding all along. The news hit Quick Connect like a ton of bricks. Investors pulled out, users started complaining about security issues, and the app's reputation took a massive hit. I was on the brink of losing everything I had worked so hard to build. But instead of folding, I decided to fight back. I took control of the company, fired everyone involved in the sabotage, and began the painstaking process of rebuilding QuickConnect's reputation. It was a humbling experience, but it also taught me valuable lessons about trust, resilience, and the true cost of revenge. With Sarah out of the picture, I refocused on what made QuickConnect great. I streamlined the app, improved security measures, and re-engaged with our loyal user base. Slowly but surely, we started to regain our footing. I also reached out to Emily and Brian, not for collaboration, but to warn them about the pitfalls of their own startup. It was a small gesture, but it gave me a sense of closure. Months of relentless work paid off. QuickConnect not only recovered but thrived, expanding into new markets and attracting major investors. My net worth began to climb exponentially, and before I knew it, I was the town's first billionaire. The feeling was surreal. What started as a quest for revenge had transformed into an unstoppable drive for success. Looking back, I realized that the journey from being called a loser to becoming a billionaire was paved with pain, betrayal, and unexpected twists. But every setback taught me something valuable, and every betrayal fueled my determination to rise above it all. If you thought my journey couldn't get any crazier, buckle up, because part 7 is where everything starts to hit the tipping point. Just when I thought I was on top of the world, life decided to throw me a curveball that tested everything I'd built, and everything I'd become. First off, let me just say that being the town's first billionaire isn't all champagne and yachts. Sure, the money is incredible, and QuickConnect is thriving, but there's a dark side to this success. I found myself working around the clock, obsessing over every detail of the business. Friends I once had started to drift away, either intimidated by my success or simply too busy with their own lives. It felt like I was trading genuine connections for boardroom meetings and investor calls. The loneliness was suffocating. I'd always been the guy who thrived on relationships, whether it was with Emily, Brian, or our circle of friends. Now, those bonds felt strained or non-existent. I started questioning if revenge was truly worth the cost. But deep down, the bitterness lingered, fueled by memories of Emily calling me a loser and Brian's betrayal. Just as I was grappling with this newfound isolation, an unexpected visitor walked through my office doors, Lily, an old friend from college. We hadn't seen each other in years, not since before Emily and Brian entered the picture. Lily was vibrant, successful in her own right, and she brought a breath of fresh air into my sterile, corporate environment. We caught up over lunch, reminiscing about the good old days. Lily was genuinely happy for my success, but there was something else in her eyes, a mix of concern and curiosity. As we delved deeper into conversation, she revealed that she'd heard about Emily and Brian's new startup venture. They were making waves in the industry, much like QuickConnect had once done. It was clear they weren't giving up on their own ambitions. Not long after Lily's visit, things at QuickConnect started to go sideways again. Users began reporting glitches and security breaches that I couldn't explain. Our top developers were suddenly resigning, and the pressure from investors was mounting. It felt like someone was deliberately trying to bring QuickConnect down from the inside. I launched an internal investigation and discovered that someone had been leaking proprietary information to competitors. The betrayal stung, but the question was, who? With Lily's mention of Emily and Brian's new venture, suspicion naturally fell back on them. It was almost too obvious, like they were back to play their old games. Determined to protect my empire, I reached out to Lily for help. She had connections in the cybersecurity world and a knack for sniffing out deceit. Together, we dug deeper into the sabotage, uncovering a tangled web of deceit that went beyond just Emily and Brian. It turned out that Sarah's downfall had opened doors for other unscrupulous players who wanted a piece of QuickConnect's success. As we navigated this murky terrain, Lily and I grew closer. Her unwavering support and sharp intellect were exactly what I needed. But mixing business with personal relationships was risky. I found myself leaning on her more than I ever had anyone else, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of hope that wasn't tainted by revenge. The climax came unexpectedly. At a high-stakes tech conference where both Quick Connect and Emily and Brian's startup were presenting, tensions reached a boiling point. I was slated to give a keynote speech, highlighting Quick Connect's latest advancements. Meanwhile, Emily and Brian were there to showcase their new product, which, surprisingly, had significant overlaps with ours. During my speech, I couldn't help but address the elephant in the room. I subtly highlighted the importance of trust and integrity in business, taking jabs at betrayals and hidden agendas. The crowd was silent, sensing the underlying tension. After the presentation, Emily approached me with a smug smile, clearly enjoying the discomfort she was causing. "You did well, Mark," she said, her tone dripping with faux sincerity. "Really impressive." I replied coolly, "Thanks, Emily. It's always nice to see you thriving." Brian chimed in, trying to salvage the moment. "Maybe there's a way our companies can collaborate, considering our similar visions." I paused, feeling the weight of every betrayal that had led me here. Collaboration is possible, but it has to be built on trust. Something that seems to have been missing lately. The room felt charged, the air thick with unspoken grievances. It was the ultimate showdown, not just between two companies, but between two men shaped by betrayal and revenge. Just when I thought things couldn't get more intense, an unexpected twist unfolded. During the networking session, a major security flaw was discovered in both Quick Connect and Emily and Brian's platform. Panic ensued as users began losing data and trust plummeted. It was a disaster that could ruin both our companies overnight. In that moment of crisis, something shifted. Emily and Brian approached me, no longer with smugness but with desperation. They proposed an emergency partnership to address the security issues together. It was an offer I never thought I'd consider, given our history. Here was the ultimate test of my journey, from betrayal to success to revenge. I had two choices: continue the vendetta or rise above it for the greater good. After a tense moment of reflection, I nodded. "All right, let's fix this together." Working alongside Emily and Brian to salvage our companies was one of the most challenging and rewarding experiences of my life. We had to put aside our differences and work towards a common goal. Through this collaboration, I realized that revenge had consumed me for so long that it had blinded me to what truly mattered: building something meaningful and sustainable. As we overcame the crisis, Quick Connect not only survived but emerged stronger. The collaboration led to innovative solutions that set new industry standards, and our companies gained mutual respect. It was a bittersweet victory, but it taught me that holding on to anger only hindered true progress. As I stand here now, reflecting on the roller coaster of events, I can't help but feel a sense of closure. My path to becoming a billionaire was paved with pain and vengeance, but it also led me to personal growth and unexpected alliances. Emily and Brian may have started the fire, but together, we extinguished it and built something greater. If you've been following my saga, you know it's been a wild ride from being called a loser by my own wife to becoming the town's first billionaire. Part 7 was intense, with alliances forming and breaking under the weight of betrayal and ambition. Now, it's time to wrap things up and share how it all finally settled, or didn't. Buckle up, because the end is anything but predictable. After that chaotic tech conference where Emily and Brian tried to salvage their crumbling startup by partnering up with me, things took a dramatic turn. The security breach was a wake-up call for both companies. We realized that in our pursuit of success, we had neglected the very foundation that made our businesses trustworthy. It was a humbling lesson for everyone involved. Working alongside Emily and Brian to fix the security flaws was no walk in the park. The tension was palpable every day. Emily was still the same manipulative, lying bitch she'd always been, but seeing her put in genuine effort to rectify the situation was unexpected. Brian, on the other hand, seemed genuinely remorseful for his part in our downfall. It was hard to fully trust them again, but necessity forced us to collaborate. Together, we launched a massive campaign to restore user trust. We implemented top-of-the-line security measures, offered transparent communication about the issues we faced, and provided compensations to affected users. Slowly but surely, QuickConnect's reputation began to recover. Investors who had pulled out started to return, impressed by our resilience and ability to handle the crisis. Amidst the chaos, I found myself reflecting on my journey. The bitterness and desire for revenge that had fueled me were slowly being replaced by something more constructive. I realized that while revenge had initially given me the drive to succeed, it wasn't sustainable. True success came from passion, integrity, and the relationships you build along the way. Lily became a crucial part of this transformation. Her unwavering support and fresh perspective helped me see beyond the anger. We started spending more time together outside of work, and our friendship blossomed into something deeper. For the first time in years, I felt a genuine connection that wasn't tainted by past betrayals. One evening, as QuickConnect celebrated its successful recovery, Emily and Brian approached me. The air was thick with unspoken words and lingering resentment. Emily, looking as stunning and sharp as ever, spoke first. "Mark, I just want to say I'm sorry for everything," she began, her voice surprisingly sincere. "I was wrong, and I realize that now." Brian nodded in agreement. "Yeah, man. I messed up. Let's put all this behind us and move forward." It was hard to accept their apologies fully, given the years of lies and betrayal. But I understood that holding on to that anger only hindered my own growth. "Apology accepted, Emily. Let's just focus on making QuickConnect the best it can be." With the past finally behind us, QuickConnect flourished like never before. We expanded into new markets, launched innovative features, and solidified our position as a leader in the tech industry. My net worth continued to climb, and I officially became the town's first billionaire. But this time, the success felt different, more fulfilling and less hollow. Lily and I grew closer, eventually becoming a couple. Her support was invaluable, and together, we navigated the complexities of both personal and professional life. I learned that true happiness wasn't just about financial success or getting even with those who wronged me, it was about building meaningful relationships and finding inner peace. Just when I thought everything was settling into a comfortable routine, life threw one last curveball my way. A mysterious investor approached me with an opportunity to expand QuickConnect internationally. The catch? It required a significant investment and would mean relinquishing some control over the company's direction. After much deliberation, I decided to take the leap. This expansion was the final step in transforming QuickConnect into a global powerhouse. With Lily by my side and a team of dedicated professionals, we navigated the challenges of scaling the business, entering new markets, and adapting to diverse cultures. Looking back, it's astonishing how far I've come. From the depths of betrayal and feeling like a loser, I rose to become a billionaire, not just through revenge, but through resilience, hard work, and the support of those who truly mattered. Emily and Brian faded into the background, their roles in my story complete. They became a part of my past that taught me valuable lessons about trust and self-worth.